So it's a holiday. Let's talk about the holiday. Specifically, let's talk about Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur has was a few themes, right? But on Yom Kippur, we do cheshbon nefesh. Anyone know what cheshbon nefesh is? Yeah, cellular accounting. I think yes. We account for where we're at. Well done. And in doing cheshbon nefesh, we do one of the other big themes of Yom Kippur, tshuva. Remember tshuva? Yeah, vaguely. It's in there somewhere. You don't need it for a few months. When you do tshuva, we talked about a little bit last year that there's actually two kinds of teshuva. And when we say tshuva, by the way, what does tshuva really mean? To return, right? From the, shav, to go back or to return. But there's really two kinds, and part of it is because tshuva is like to go back. Like, do you want to go back to the person who was doing bad things, or you can't undo these things? And I think it's Chai Gaon who actually writes about like tshuva is like one of the highest miracles, he says, because only a moron would believe that by saying certain words that would make it right. And so you must understand that actually tshuva is an incredible miracle, because in fact, we do have the potential to say certain words to make things right. But I digress, and this is maybe why I should write things down. So we talk about tshuva. There's this notion of two different kinds of teshuva, right? There's teshuva tachta'a and teshuva ila'a. Unsure why there's it's a chirik and not a... Anyway, so in these two forms of teshuva, this teshuva tachta'a, we have this idea, this lower teshuva, literally, right, where we say, look, I did something wrong and I apologize to the person. Simple. Everyone's with me? Big theme of Yom Kippur, but we're only half done. There's a second kind of teshuva ila'ah, the higher form of teshuva, and that one has nothing to do with the going back and fixing your wrongs. That form of teshuva says, this is the person I need to be. I want to get there. I want to return to a more complete version of myself. And this teshuva is a lot harder to do. And it's especially a lot harder because it doesn't necessarily start in some mistake we've made. It's the third, I think, Rabbi of Chabad, don't quote me on that, right? Writes that even a tzaddik, a completely righteous person, can do this latter form of teshuva even if they've done no wrongs. But here's the problem. Suppose I said, you need to do this teshuva to get to the highest realized version of yourself. So that's great, Michael, I love it. What does that look like? I mean, how do you get there? Right? I mean, it's a really good idea in theory, but if I said, I need you to go there, you would say, amazing, but where is there? What is the highest version of me? And so now we're going to take it back a little bit, because in Judaism, I have this refrain, by the way, like my rabbi kind of drilled it in me growing up. Every Jewish holiday is a workshop for the soul. That's it. Yes, there's history, there's tradition, there's some nash, if we're lucky, not Yom Kippur. But every Jewish holiday is a workshop for the soul. That is what it's all about. And thank goodness. Like, we can improve, we can get better. It's incredible. Some of you may know I spent the past, so before I spent Passover with my parents, and for 2 days before I was at Yale Divinity. And it was it was a very interesting experience, very Christian, frankly, because I was trying to explain Jewish tradition. I was like, every holiday, workshop, we're trying to get better. And they were like, we're doing something very similar, because we live in original sin and we're trying to get better. And I said, God, that's so depressing. To each their own, they're beautiful parts of tradition, but I was like, I really love this idea, like Passover. And they're like, well, we have Lent, 40 days. And I was like, well, we just have 7. The path of yeast resistance, I was told. Yeah, you like that one? So Passover is a workshop for the soul. What's the workshop? What's that? Workshop on the belly? You have to get your dates to matzah ratio right. But no, Passover, we have this, you've heard this refrain, right? There's spiritual chametz, that we literally burn our chametz, right? And in Deuteronomy, we actually said, right, burn it from within your midst, right? We burn it. But there's also this idea that internally we all have some sort of internal Mitzrayim, internal narrow place, internal Egypt, internal comfort zone. The workshop on Passover, you got very little time left, folks, is about identifying, what do I need to go free? How do I move my soul along out of the Mitzrayim, literally the narrow place? That's the workshop. And I want to add a second level to this because we never talk about it in this sense. When we talk about this workshop for the soul, it's a deeply individual experience. It's atomized. But the reality is we all play a part in our nation, in our community right here. Can we identify what our role is in the narrow space? You might say, I'm blameless in my community, and good for you, but I don't believe it. Because we have this idea, right? Abraham Joshua Heschel famously says, in a moral community or in a moral society, some are guilty, but all are responsible. That workshop is not just an individual experience. We also have to look at how we participate in the goings-on of our community and the choices we've made and what we support, ignore, push to the side. All of this becomes part of the workshop. So I want to go back now to teshuvah. Good word choice, going back. I want to go back to teshuvah, this higher form of teshuvah. Because what I'm trying to imply is that we have a yearly cycle of identifying, oh, you know what, I could be doing like this. Oh, you know what, I could go free here. Purim, we talked about, right? Taking off our inner masks, right? Or sometimes like the hafuch is a verb that comes up a lot in the last book of Megillah. We talk about how we flip our flaws into our features. Pesach, we talk about how we can get rid of the sort of chametz, the poor parts, the spiritually impoverished parts in ourselves, move them aside, get rid of them. If you want to make Yom Kippur a really meaningful Yom Kippur this year, to do this higher form of teshuvah, you want to know where you're going with it. The work begins now. So, food for thought. Well, yeast-free food for thought. With that, Shabbat Shalom.